Red Plum Blossoms by Ogata Corinne, made in 1710 to 1716. It is made of ink, watercolor, and gold leaf on paper. It is a phenomenal piece of Japanese art. And the context here is that Ogata Corinne was born to a wealthy family that ran a shop that sold expensive material to wealthy people. And Ogata Corinne inherited that, but he squandered all of his wealth and had to turn to art then to make a living. And this piece he made at near the end of his life. And it is a style that he did not necessarily create, but that he brought back into popularity. And you can see in this piece on the screen that Sotsatsu made this screen, and it shows us nature, so it's very nature centered, but it's also kind of abstract, and it's got these swirly patterns for the water. So it really relates to what Ogata Corinne created in White and Red Plum Blossoms. So Ogata took the inspiration of artists from 100 years ago, and then he created what's called the Rinpa school. And in that name, Rin, that's the last syllable of his first name, Rin here, combined with the pa meaning school, and so we have Rinpa. But the characteristics of Rinpa school art is it has this abstract design, nature focus. It's got gold on the background often, and silver can also be used. It's just this exaggeration of nature. So here's an example then of Rinpa school art. Here's another. And this one, of course, has that gold background. It features nature, it exaggerates nature, and it makes it a bit abstract at the same time. And here's one with gold background, abstract of nature a little bit. And nature is the focus. This was used by the Metropolitan Museum of Art on the cover of a brochure that informed people about the Rinpa School of Art. And here's our piece in the museum at Atami, Japan. So this is, our piece is two separate screens that are placed together. So it's one piece, but they're 52 inches wide. Each of them, 62 inches wide and 68 inches tall. They're brought out for a month every year toward the end of winter, beginning of spring, because that's when the plum blossoms bloom. The form, just like other Rinpa school art, is a gold background. We see a stream flowing through the center. The stream is much wider at the bottom or the front, and then becomes more narrow as it goes up the screen. It's got a great swirling pattern in it, right? That makes it look like the stream water is moving. And then on either side of the stream, there are plum trees, a red plum tree on the right and a white plum tree on the left. The one on the right with the red blossoms is more prolific. It's younger. In terms of content, the Rinpa school and Ogata Corinne used a technique called terashikomi, and in that technique, the tree branches and trunks were made by applying paint to the paper, and while the paint was still wet, additional paint was placed on top of it, and so that creates some depth, some interest, and it's like not completely controllable, right? The paint will meld with each other and they blend, they blur. So that's terashikomi, used to make the trunks. And then the flowers, lots of time we think about making flowers when we're young, where we draw a line, an outline of the flower, and then we color it in. Well, these flowers are made without the lines. And so that's called makotsu. and that translates as bonelessness. It has no lines, and so they're painted on, so they're going to be a little more altered shape. Like, see, this one is not quite, the perfect little flower shape so much. Okay, in terms of content, the tree on the right is a young tree, and some would say, should that be translated into representing Ogata Karin's youth? So the background gives us no sense of time. It is pretty neutral. And so we're just left to be wondering about, oh, wow, this young tree here. And then you can see it's separated from the other tree by this stream. And so is this traveling through time, that sense of traveling through time? And you get to the other side of the stream, and there is an older tree. And it's older because, well, I used to have a plum tree in my yard. And when it was young, it required a lot of pruning. Do you see all these little branches here? These are just shoots of it's like a crazy young thing that is just shooting off all of these branches that, look at these crossing branches right there. Sometimes a pruner would go in and say, we got to uncross those. We don't want them rubbing against each other. And so I did that with my young plum tree. But then as it ages, a plum tree can be less prolific in its blossoms, and then the branches can become more structured like this branch here. These are 300 and some plum trees that are planted outside of the museum where this national treasure, this piece of art is a national treasure, where it resides. And so people come to see the plum trees and they see the art in the late winter, early spring. Well, this branch goes down and then it goes out. It's an old branch. And you can see this one. The trunk goes off to the left, creates some serious interest. And then a branch comes down from up above and then does this wild turn. So that's maturity here. And that's what Corinne maybe has experienced as he's crossed over that stream of time. So the function of white and red plum blossoms is it makes us ponder nature, makes us ponder the expanse of time. It's an amazing example of Renpa school, and it uses terashikomi on the trunks where the ink paint colors blend, and mokotsu, bonelessness, making the plum blossoms. This is by Ogata Karin, made in 1710 to 1716, of ink, watercolor, and gold leaf on paper.